Hello and welcome to Pardon My Disruption. I am Alan Berkson. I am the Director of Community Outreach for Freshdesk, and I'm joined as always by Jonathan Yarmis, aka Dr. Disruptive. The doctor is in the house.
Making a house call?
You still make house calls?
Oh, old school.
As long as they pay enough. And we are broadcasting from the Stanford Innovation Center in beautiful downtown Stanford, and actually it's a pretty sunny day today. So.
Yeah, the weather has gotten nicer. I think today is going to be the last vestige of autumn with the cold front coming through.
The leaves don't look like they started to, well, a little bit. We're just getting to fall. So we are here the second Friday of every month, and
don't mind me my Ted Cruz moment.
No, was it Ted Cruz or was it Marco Rubio?
You're right, it was Rubio. Okay, either one of those Republican candidates.
One of those Republican candidates. Oh boy. No. This is a technology show. We'll talk about technology.
But first, let's talk about sports.
Is there anything interesting going on in sports? Because it's postseason. Usually, it's waiting for football.
Yeah, the Yankee season's over.
The Mets,
yes. You know, when last we saw them, Carlos Beltran was sitting with the bat on his shoulder.
Oh, that's right. Adam Wainwright with that crazy curveball.
Oh, admittedly a tough pitch, but before the pitch, I turned to the guy next to me. I was in the ballpark that night and said, whatever you do, don't leave your bat on your shoulder. Don't leave the bat on your shoulder.
Well, here's a small consolation. There were 3 batters up in the bottom of the ninth for the Yankees in their one-game playoff. One of them was Carlos Beltran,
yes.
And he struck out. He didn't strike out looking, but he struck out. So, I don't know what to do with myself. I get to still think about baseball in the fall.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So,
and wonderful. #LGM.
Let's go Mets. So there is so much going on in tech right now. We're gonna maybe have to go through some of these pretty quickly, but I think Twitter's one of our favorite whipping dogs.
Yes.
They still haven't figured out what business they're in. They still haven't figured out where they're going.
And so maybe they're trying to rewind time.
What is the saying? The more things change, the more they stay the same, right?
Or let's meet the new boss, same as the old boss. We won't get fooled again.
So they brought back Jack Dorsey. What does that mean? What do you think? What's going on?
What that means is a couple of things. Is one, they haven't had a solution to the problem yet, and they've got considerable challenges. We've talked about this before. The biggest challenge they've got is monetizing infrastructure is a really difficult thing. A lot of people who have infrastructure monetize it in ways, whether they exploit a monopoly or have a related service. Google perhaps being the greatest example. Anybody can do a search engine. What Google figured out early on was how to monetize the search engine because there was premium real estate available for sale. We had lots of search engines before, but Google figured out how to make money off of that utility and led down a virtuous cycle. Twitter has had a problem where they've got what's undeniably a very valuable and interesting service, but how do you make money at it? And unfortunately, the things they've tried to do with regards to making money are things that I would say in some measure have struck at the core value of the platform. So one, how does advertising work in a Twitter environment? And the answer is, inconclusive, and I'd say...
How many tweets have you seen that were promoted that you thought had value and that you felt like clicking through?
That I took action on?
Yes.
Probably some.
Look, we're not necessarily the right...
Probably some, all of them by mistake.
Okay. Well, then that's it. But then they're doing their job. They're working.
Yeah. Although, we'll talk about that some other show, the problem, what that means for monetizing mobile traffic, and the whole issue of are advertisers getting their money's worth in general, from internet advertising with all sorts of click fraud and bots and viewability issues. And we could spend a whole hour just talking about that. But the bottom line, Twitter has a problem, and the two latest solutions that they've floated, in my mind, do nothing to address their fundamental core problem. So solution number one has been, we need more characters. So maybe we'll double.
Well, just to step back, you said many times on this show, the biggest challenge they have is the absolutely horrendous out-of-the-box experience, right? Yes. And they are trying to take steps. So some of the steps they're doing are trying to address that, but I'm not sure if they're working.
You think 280 characters?
No, I think the Moments is, though. I think that.
No, I actually think that's a terrible idea.
I'm not saying it was a good idea, but I think that's what they're trying to address.
Yeah, but what they're, and for those of you not familiar with Moments, the whole idea is when you look at the Twitter stream, you get this raw, naked stream of information that has no coherence to it whatsoever. That's actually the core value of the Twitter infrastructure. It enables you to tap into a raw stream. What they've said they need to do is curate that stream and present solutions around it. I think they're the wrong party to be doing that. They ought to have a rich ecosystem of people who are curating the Twitter stream to bring solutions to market. This ought to be something everybody's doing.
When did they shut down their API? Was that 2 years ago?
Yeah, exactly.
So they had that burgeoning ecosystem. They had lots of very creative players in the market, and they just shut them down.
Right. Absolutely foolish. And usually when you shut people down, it's because you're going to take over the things yourself. One, if Moments is that the time frame between shutting it down and coming forward with your own solution, 2 years is 3 lifetimes in internet time. So, disgustingly slow. And 2, there is no way they can meet the demand for that kind of solution. Competing with channel partners, and we'll revisit this conversation when we talk about Microsoft, but competing with channel partners, you invited people to build on your API, you then shut them down, you then brought out your own solutions. If and when Jack Dorsey and company recognize all of this was a terrible mistake, will anybody buy into, it's like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. This is the third time. They cut them down. They've said they're going to build their own solutions, and now are they going to invite people in and saying, we want you on the platform?
Let's set Jack Dorsey aside, and suddenly Jonathan Yarmis is now CEO of Twitter.
Yes.
What do you do?
What are the successful...
After you stop crying.
No, I'd be thrilled. I did not get a call from the board. They clearly didn't do their due diligence.
That's because you have an Android phone. And you haven't.
Well, I've got a Twitter app, several Twitter apps on my phone.
So you're CEO.
Who are the successful players in the marketplace? The players in the marketplace, for the most part, Apple, Facebook, Google, are ones who have built a rich ecosystem that says we've got a core value proposition that's extended by hundreds and thousands of people who build successful businesses on top of our platforms and information flows. Twitter has done everything they can to cut out people building rich solutions. They've had insane pricing, incomplete solutions. They've changed strategy. The first thing I do is say, I'm an ecosystem provider. I do well when you do well. If we all make money, there will be enough money to share. I'll be able to invest in the kinds of things I need to do to sustain the robust platform, because I've got such value in the information that's coming in that there is a way to monetize it. You need me, I need you. We're going to build a partner ecosystem that brings rich solutions on top of the Twitter flow.
All right, but so speaking as and I've talked about this before, I rarely use Twitter.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I use Facebook. I use a third party, so already Twitter is behind the 8 ball. So it's a different experience.
Right, and the third party solutions that you use though, you know, are you talking about things like TweetDeck or?
So I use Hootsuite, right.
Yeah, you know, but that's just a client tool to the information stream. It's still, you know, all it is a front end to using Twitter. It's not something, you know, I mean, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, yes. You know, I use TweetDeck. TweetDeck is a better interface than the raw twitter.com, but doesn't give me any of the value that I really want in terms of alerts, notifications, curation.
I guess what I'm saying is that the Twitter page gives other stuff, and they control the experience more than what they control when I'm just using Twitter as a feed,
right?
As opposed to the Twitter experience. On Facebook, even though I'm looking for my update, all the ads are on the side, and I'm in the Facebook experience, and they control it.
Yeah, but with Twitter, I don't want the Twitter experience. There is no one the Twitter experience. You know, I'm starting to sound like George W. Bush. The Twitter, yeah, the Google, the Twitters. Yeah, he was the Google. But I don't want a Twitter experience. This is one of those things where this is exactly why they're having a terrible problem. That your only interface right now with Twitter is basically the raw feed. You know, and you think that, you know, the tools you like, what they do is actually disaggregate the feed into multiple sub feeds.
So your first step as CEO is to reopen the API?
Absolutely. And make it affordable, sharing the value of that's being delivered out of my platform, so that, yeah, it's not all going to be free, you know, to the ecosystem. They're making money at it. I, as the infrastructure provider, you know, we need to have a win-win scenario here. You know, I can't continue to invest in the raw infrastructure unless I share in your success. And here are the terms under which we're going to do it. But open the API, build new APIs, just figure out how it is people are valuing the feed, because they're, you know, everything you see, you know, rich media integrations, you know, that you can't watch a TV show these days without, and here are the comments from Twitter. It's a feedback mechanism. It's a political season.
Everybody has their Twitter handle next to their name and their
Facebook
and their title.
Yeah.
And they have but if you're watching a news show or doing an interview, they always put the person's name and their affiliation and their Twitter handle.
Right. Yeah. But the answer is, you know, Twitter can't come up with all the interesting ways to monetize their feed. In fact, I could argue they haven't come up with any interesting ways to monetize the feed.
All right,
I believe there are lots of them. They need to empower the ecosystem and share in the economic benefit.
Jonathan's sitting here. He's waiting for your call.
You know, my former Gartner rates. What do they charge? $10,000 a day for consulting. That's damn cheap when the value we're talking about.
Exactly. Here. All right. So you're a car guy.
Yes. Guilty as charged.
And there's been lots of car software issues and cars.
Yes. No, and I remember a few.
What was the line you said before we started? You talked about hardware and software.
Everything's a software-defined world now.
Right.
Yeah. You know, hardware is just a vehicle through which, you know, I need some kind of hardware to run my software. But hardware, you know, without software, all of this stuff is really pretty boring. You know, I mean, it's a very pretty computer. Without software, you know, it's chips and plastic and aluminum.
Well, that was me in 1979 playing with my TRX-80. It was a nice toy, but it had no software.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So we're moving to a software-defined world, and you know, there are a bunch of interesting implications about software-defined worlds. You know, number one is, there are bad guys out there who like infiltrating software-defined worlds for fun and profit. You know, and cars represent an opportunity for both of those. You know, so let's first talk about.
Well, I guess the thing to think about is there are no side streets on the internet. There's no cul-de-sacs. There's no dead-end streets where you can just hide. Every connection is a superhighway,
Yes.
and anybody can get there.
Yes, and the Internet of Things is something where we're saying we want to connect more things to that highway. It's not just computers, it's not just computers and mobile phones, it's everything. It's subcomponentry in cars, it's thermostats and light bulbs and traffic lights and roads, and everything being connected to that network.
So Volkswagen was in the news.
This one just, first of all, from a corporate malfeasance perspective, I would love to have been a fly on the wall in those meetings where somebody said, we could rig the software so that our cars are actually belching pollution at 40 times the legally allowed limit. But whenever anybody tests them for pollution, the car will be smart enough to recognize it and be as clean as an operating room.
It's like you have your radar detector on, and as soon as you hear it beep, you put your foot on the brake.
Yeah, but this is one of those where some engineer, and I was having this discussion with somebody earlier this week where I was talking about the differences between the Bay Area and New York. I love the Bay Area. It's great that it exists. I've been there over 100 times in my life. And the fundamental mindset out there is let's explore what's possible. For the most part, they don't ask the question, is this a good idea?
Right.
What are the implications of this? They just say, what's possible? And then somewhere, hopefully, you get grown-ups in the room who go, yeah, that's possible, but maybe it's not such a good idea.
Right.
Peeple, for instance.
People. Yeah, you want to?
Yeah, we'll divert to people.
No, just because this is the most idiotic.
It's the most idiotic, brilliant idea.
Right.
So those of you not familiar with Peeple.
Peeple.
Yeah, don't go looking for the website because I think they took it down. Yeah. But they came up with a website that said, what if we had the Yelp for people? So right now we review restaurants, we review contractors and merchants. Why don't we review each other? So if I want to sit there and, I spend a lot of time with you, but I don't really know you. What if I want to, your friends, what did they say about Alan? Your neighbors talking about the wild pool parties at 2 a.m.
I wish I had a pool.
Yeah, and the hallucinogenic drugs that lead you to believe, your drug dealer says you don't pay on time,
Right.
all of those kinds of things. So why don't we have a site that enables people to review each other? The internet reaction.
And we don't want to restrict it to any type of veracity or,
right?
Because that would make it.
Yeah,
that would limit people's.
This is crowdsourcing.
Right,
yes,
right.
Yeah. Over time, the preponderance of evidence will suss out those kinds of things.
Right.
The internet reaction was swift and violent. Right? This is the most ridiculous idea in the history of mankind, and how can they possibly think this is good and they're going to die a quick death, and if not, we are going to guarantee that they never, the reaction was just over the top. Now, the funny thing, I actually think that fundamentally it's a good idea, that being able to, we've got LinkedIn and Facebook, and we've got a variety of ways to find information about people. Having a site that formally does that with some curation and vetting and quality control and all sorts of mechanisms, conceptually is a good idea. But this came out of San Francisco. It's look what we can do. And then the rest of the world that kind of said, okay, it's great you can do that. Do we want to do that? Hell no. And they're having to go back and they've already said, yeah, we recognize that was a bad idea. We now want it to only be approved things that are favorable references and so on. And the idea is dead on arrival. They will, limp away into infamy, another one of those, 1 week internet wonders, and we'll never hear from them again. But yeah. But
what was that one?
Chat roulette.
Yeah.
Chat roulette. Oh,
Yeah. There are a series of things like that. But back to Volkswagen,
Well, so you were talking about things that you should do versus that mentality.
Yeah. So somewhere a Volkswagen engineer said, we can do this, and understand that they were under considerable pressure. This is not an excuse. Not an excuse. I don't care what pressure you're under. They were under pressure. They're talking a lot about clean diesel, and the truth of the matter is, it wasn't. And the business people were under pressure to deliver volumes. The engineers were under pressure to deliver a solution. And somewhere they said, it's a software problem.
It's not a hardware problem.
Yeah, it's a software problem. And so they fixed the software. How anybody in any position of responsibility could have signed off on that one is amazing to me, and I've got to believe there will be jail sentences and huge financial penalties. It's one of those ones where the very survival of Volkswagen is not a sure thing, because this is one of those things where the penalties, they could have to conceivably buy back millions of automobiles. If you bought one of these thinking, I'm being green for the environment.
Right.
And Volkswagen may say, it's just a software thing, bring it in, we'll fix the software, that will actually reduce the pollution, but your car won't be performing as well as it did and things like that. I imagine a large number of people will say, that's not the car I bought. It's not the company I want to buy from. I want my money back. And what happens, the financial penalties here could be and should be staggering. And in my mind, we need to make an example of them, because in this software-defined world, we're going to have lots of opportunities to do things like this, where, you've got intelligent software that's going to make decisions based on scenarios that...
Well, there was I think about a year ago, Tesla had the issue where their cars the suspension would lower for high speed, but then there was the risk of the battery igniting or something like that. So they pushed out a patch. So everybody who had bought the car thinking that they'd be able to have that for high speed now no longer has that feature.
Right.
They lost functionality in their car.
And the whole software world, where it gets interesting, because you would think, the very conversation we're having invites thoughts of, maybe there ought to be a third-party market. Being a car guy, there's wonderful aftermarket today for performance parts. One of those performance parts is you can buy chips and replace the ICU in your car with a chip that changes certain parameters, so you've got a faster performing car. Car makers, let's see, there are two ways. Let's play Mad Magazine. What they said, what they really meant. The car makers have said, this is a bad thing, that people will mess around with the software such that
it's a bad thing, but here, take this.
Yeah, no, it's a bad thing.
Right.
Because it affects the safety and reliability of the automobile, and we can't be responsible for that. What they really mean is, we haven't figured out yet how to get our piece of that money. But you're right, that's a great market opportunity. And as soon as we figure out how to make money at it, we're going to enable a third party. I can see absolutely when you talk about the coming of an Apple car, this is what Apple's thinking about. They're going to deliver a software platform, and they're going to have the iCar store where you can buy performance software aftermarket things, and Apple will get 30% of the software componentry that they sell. That's absolutely, no doubt in my mind, what they're planning on doing.
John, it brings a new definition to unlocking your car, though.
Yeah.
If you had to guess, when?
Well, Apple's, the question was, when, and, and Apple's talked about having a car as soon as 2018 or so. I'm surprised with the aggressiveness of that time frame, but the interesting thing about it, and I think Apple's putting a stake in the ground, is car manufacturers move with glacial rapidity. I mean, for them to do a new platform, the development cycles on those things are routinely 3 to even 7 years. And when they bring a platform out, they want it to be around for years. I imagine Apple sitting there thinking we can take a modular, modern approach to this and deliver things that have much faster product cycles. So, if they do it in 2017, 18, I think not only will it be seminal in terms of, these software-defined platforms, it will also really force the auto manufacturers to totally rethink their approach to bringing cars to market. The other interesting thing about this software platform, something I am not familiar with, John Deere.
Yes.
You buy a John Deere tractor now, you actually do not buy the tractor. You license the tractor from John Deere and they give you some, irrevocable, whatever. So it looks like ownership to you, but what they preclude you from doing because they retain ownership is modifying the platform. They anticipating this software-defined world have said, we need to own the platform, and owning the platform changes the nature of the relationship between the manufacturer and the consumer of the product, and we're going to, fundamentally own the environment so we can do and monetize the things on our platform rather than leaving all of that to a third-party marketplace.
Right.
Yeah, I think on your life cycle question too, one of the things that when this really takes off, at least in the car environment, is you're going to run into state and federal regulation, and we've experienced this in the airline industry. Software has been around for decades, and they have to go through. They have, of course, a much higher level, but you're talking about comment period, regulation, and the software, this regulation cycle, the car cycle.
The comment was about all of this is running into a regulatory environment that A, never anticipated this stuff, and B, if I talked about the car development cycle being slow, the regulatory environment, it's lifetimes. The car franchising requirements that Tesla's running into are things that came about in the 1920s and 30s. Here we are 100 years later, and a lot of car manufacturers are unable to do some of the things they want to do because of regulations that were crafted 100 years ago.
But if you talk about cops and robbers, the regulations are, and the enforcement is built around a world where engineering takes a long time. So I don't have to worry about how closely, because they're not going to come out with something new. In a software-defined world, your risk tolerance goes way up, because if you make a mistake, you send out a patch. You don't have to send out a whole new piece. And it's harder but the regulatory is still used to a different world of engineering versus hardware engineering.
So that's what's different about IoT. That the risk tolerance maybe shouldn't be much higher because we're talking about people's lives. If your cloud database server goes down, unfortunate, but generally not.
Wait a second, I'm a DBA
I know.
by trade, so you tell me the database server went down, that's a big deal.
But that's why you've got full employment, because those things happen.
Right.
You go save the day and you're the hero. Right. That when things happen with cars and all these proofs of concept about, GM, apparently, there was a well-documented hole in, I believe it was through OnStar, a security hole that they knew about that they left unaddressed for 5 years. And what did this hole enable? It enabled control of everything but steering. But it, for instance, enabled disabling of brakes. And this was a hole that existed for 5 years. They knew about it, and their solution to it was, and I think, some of that mindset that needs to change is, and this is one of the biggest challenges, I'd say, in software development, period. That security typically is the thing that's last thought about. You think about the functional spec, MVP, let's get into the market, and if I don't get security right, I'll get that in V2, or I'll get that in V3, or oops, I'll get that the next time I re-architect the platform.
Right.
And that may work in a consumer world. In an IoT world, the dangers of that thought process, are going to not only cost lives, and I don't want to be dramatic, but I think it was after the last show, we had an interesting discussion about autonomously driving cars. And we're going to have to make software decisions. When you're just sitting there as a passenger, the car is going to look at a threat and decide, what do I do? And one of its options may be, okay, that's a gaggle of school kids. If I continue straight ahead, I'm going to kill 6 kids. So I'm going to drive off a cliff, likely killing you, but I serve the greater good. And in this software-defined world, we're going to be making those kinds of decisions. And
they
boy,
they have to be programmed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And would you get in a car knowing that it ran the risk of killing you?
Well, people do that every day.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the known risk versus the unknown risk.
Yes. Yeah. But in this, the known risk, at least there's some feeling I can control things.
It's
however mistaken.
Yeah.
However mistaken
control.
Would there always be a manual override?
The question is, won't there always be a manual override? And I'd say the answer is probably yes. But maybe yes.
So what's going to happen is,
But you're sitting in the back seat reading the newspaper.
it's not even that. It's not even that. The rate of action is going to increase, because that's the whole idea. If everything's automated, then we can drive faster, we can drive closer together, because we don't have to worry about human reaction times. You won't even have the ability to manually.
Yeah, it'll be too late.
It'll be too late.
You're unlock brakes.
Yeah.
There's no manual override for your unlock brakes.
Right.
But
No.
with virtual reality and.
With virtual reality, he said, well, you won't have to go anywhere anyway.
Yeah, but I think this software-defined world, and you look at the implications. I mean, BMW and Mercedes just bought Nokia's mapping division here for some number of billions of dollars. And why did they buy it? Because at some level, autonomous cars, a key underpinning is incredibly accurate mapping. That it's not one of those things, those of you who use GPSs now, and we have a perfect example. Yeah, well, we have a perfect example of it here in Stamford. If I get off, heading southbound on 95, if I get off at exit 7, I run on the service road that's immediately parallel to 95. My GPS frequently thinks I should get off at exit 6. So when I get off at exit 7, it thinks I'm still on 95.
Right.
Yeah. No, with the net result being, if I'm coming up to a traffic light and it's not programmed to be thinking of the traffic light because it thinks I'm on 95, it's going to have me go through the speed, through the intersection at 55 miles an hour, being as I'm a law-abiding citizen, with some fascinating, okay, so maybe I've sped on occasion, but statute of limitations has expired for those. But the notion is, the information flow, and what is the right architecture for smart driving cars? Is it knowledge of the roads? Is it ability to simulate human eyesight? What is the right approach? And we had another, I won't get into it today because we've already spent.
Or is it a network effect where they're communicating with each other?
Right, and with the road itself.
Right.
Yeah. And I actually think for lots of reasons, autonomously driving cars are much further out than people think they are. And I think we're missing a huge opportunity for smart roads, especially, I'm sensitive to it here because, here in Connecticut, Interstate 95, Senator Blumenthal, Senator Murphy, we got a terrible problem here, fix the highway bill. But even if they had billions, the cost of real, if we decided we wanted to add a lane to 95, it would be one of those terrible scenarios where the disruption for several years would be mammoth. And by the time they completed the project, it would be inadequate for the, traffic expands to fill the available capacity.
Right.
We need a solution about smarter roads, and that would be a much quicker fix for this problem.
Right.
Much less of a software complexity, much less of a risk and liability, although it would be amusing to see somebody hack into the grid and have cars dancing all over the highway. But this software-defined world as it comes with cars is just endlessly fascinating to me, and this Volkswagen thing just brings it to the forefront and is the tip of the iceberg.
All right, it's time for some rapid fire.
Are we already up to that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Although actually, I want
okay.
to hear about your sports because we started off with Mets. I know that I was watching Amazon AWS and Major League Baseball did a demonstration of the stats that they're capturing. I mean, the velocity that the ball is leaving the park, how fast somebody's going from first to second, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, if you want to look at one of the most interesting companies using information technology, look at what's affectionately referred to as MLBAM, Major League Baseball Advanced Media.
Although we should just look at FanDuel and DraftKings and how they're.
Well, we will talk about that.
But that's what it was. MLBAM is what they were talking about.
Yes, yeah. Major League Baseball Advanced Media. Baseball is. There are a lot of people who don't understand our fascination with baseball. But baseball is such a beautiful game, and it lends itself to fascinating discussion and measurement.
Like last night, when Chris Young pitched to Alvaro, it was the largest differential in height ever in the postseason.
Between a
6'10" pitcher and a 5'6" batter. So that's the kind of crazy stats.
Although I still think whoever pitched, was it postseason? Because whoever pitched to Eddie Gaedel.
No, it was postseason.
Okay.
It was postseason, yeah.
Because Eddie Gaedel, a Bill Veeck stunt, he brought up a pinch hitter who was 3'7", and the baseball strike zone is from your knees to your armpits when you take your normal batting stance. Since this was the first time Eddie Gaedel had ever batted, he got to define his normal batting stance. So he went to a tight crouch. So his strike zone was approximately this. Not surprisingly, he walked on 4 pitches, and retired. But the interesting statistics that we're able to capture, all sorts of things. It used to be fielding percentage was something that basically the number of balls hit to you, how many of them did you get an error on, and that was your fielding percentage. So if you had a really high fielding percentage, you were perceived as a good fielder. What we've discovered is a lot of fielders, the reason why they have a good fielding percentage.
They're a cheater.
I'm glad you said that. It's because they can't get to anything. They make, perfectly fine plays on the balls they can reach, but have no range and therefore don't subject themselves to as many difficult situations.
Right.
So baseball is just a fascinating petri dish for the intersection of instrumented players, communities, and it's not just how the teams might use the information, but how fans might use the information for entertainment and betting. And I think that brings us to this DraftKings and FanDuel thing. If you're a football fan, it seems like about a third of the TV commercials you see during a football game.
Yeah, and one station it's DraftKings, another station it's FanDuel.
Yeah, and the notion behind these, there's been this fantasy sports phenomenon for a large number of years now, And what fantasy sports was, you had your own teams and you tracked them over the course of a season. And it was a real large commitment to get involved in fantasy. I've actually never.
I've done it, and
I've
it's
never
a lot
done
of,
it.
it's a lot
Yeah.
of work.
But
I used to know every player in the National League and also their farm system and their top prospects.
yeah, but somewhere along the way, some shrewd business person had the idea that said, instead of betting on the entire season, why don't we enable people to play these fantasy-like games, but do it on just today's games? And they've gotten around loopholes in law.
Well, no, because
it's not a loophole.
it's a game of skill.
Yes.
And actually, the stuff that we're going to talk about proves that
it's a game of skill.
Yeah.
They lure you in with you can win millions. The truth of the matter is, if you want to win millions, go to Las Vegas, where the game of luck, you've got a 1 in whatever chance of winning your millions. If you're the average casual player in these games, because it's a game of skill, you have 0 chance of winning. The people who win are using sophisticated programmatic approaches to select Moneyball-like undervalued resources, and are playing multiple teams that maximize their ability. So it's a game that's rigged against the casual player. You're not going to win the millions, and they're trying to address that by having, because in typical card playing style, people love the whale. The person who comes in is going to spend a lot of money and lose it, and they would prey on these beginners. So if they've now got pools that try and isolate them or have low enough stakes so that you might be happy with winning $100, the big stakes players won't bother. They're having to address it. But the interesting thing that's come in the last couple of weeks,
This is awesome.
is I think, draft, some of the disproportionate winners on DraftKings were people who were employed by FanDuel. And what they did is they looked at the data that was coming in on their platform, saw how the smart money was betting, and then went over to the competition and bet with effectively inside information. I mean, yeah.
Winning like something like 2% of the pools or something like that. I mean, which doesn't sound like a lot when you're talking about millions.
Yeah, and 2% of the pools, when they represented 0.00002% of the players,
right.
Their returns were outsized. And this is one of those things.
And it's not like it's insider trading, because they weren't betting on their own games. They were
Right.
going to do
Right. But they were, if this were Wall Street, and we may see regulation like Wall Street,
Right.
they were trading on inside information.
Oh, absolutely.
They had inside information, and the way the two competitors have responded is saying their employees can't bet.
Well, look,
That's not the right solution.
when I worked on Wall Street, not that I had anything to do with any equities, but I had to use our company's brokerage account, and there could be a chance that I said I want to buy a stock, and they say no, you can't.
Even that's not the answer. We need the sports betting's version of Reg FD. Make the information available. That they've got the information.
Right.
Make the information available so that we can make informed decisions. But wow, they were trading on inside information, and I think just brilliant. And I think it was happening both ways. And just evildoers. I mean, in a software-defined world, information enables cheating, and sometimes it's just rigging the games against people, and we need regulations to address that. Or in the case of Volkswagen, I come back to, we need harsh penalties, because the opportunities to do things like that are just going to be massive. If you're GE, GE's running a lot of ads these days, trying to, have you heard the ads they're running? This guy is a software developer, and he's going to work for GE, and he's trying to explain to his cool friends who are, probably going to work for Google and Facebook, or his parents who are thinking, he's making locomotives. No, I'm really doing software. GE's got an interesting problem. They make light bulbs. It used to be your light bulb blew out every 9 months. Now the damn thing lasts for years.
It'll last longer than you probably own your house.
Yes.
I thought about
Yeah.
that in terms of, can I
Yeah.
buy this bulb?
Yeah, they're going to come up with software-defined environments that enhance the utility of your light bulbs, and somewhere an engineer can go, we can do things that force loads down that bulb. So instead of, while it technically can last 17 years, we can enable people to do really neat things with the light bulb that cause it to burn out in 3.
So Jim Fowler, who's the CIO of GE, was at Amazon AWS reInvent and said, and I don't know what the measure is, but he said GE is the 10th largest software manufacturer in the world.
Yeah. I'm surprised it's at,
You thought it would be higher?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, but everybody, the number of consults I've been on over the years where I've forced companies, everybody's really a software developer. If you're not thinking of how software augments your solution, whether it's services, hardware, or native software, you're, I won't say too late, but you're on the verge of being marginalized, being Ubered.
All right, now we really have to go into rapid fire.
Okay. Yes.
All right.
42.
Let's do this quick. Microsoft hardware announcement.
Yeah.
A Microsoft hardware announcement. Not a software announcement, a hardware announcement.
Well, the interesting thing,
And
they're doing
actually
great
made me
things.
think that I might want it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Surface, let's give kudos. Surface 3 is a nice platform. And in classic Microsoft behavior, it's version 3. That's the good one. Yeah. But the new laptop, I just bought a new one, and it's kind of Microsoft-like. The specs aren't quite the same, but it's like, okay.
It'll flip around and.
No, not just flip around.
Oh, it's a.
Yeah. I've now got a tablet.
Right.
Microsoft's got a cooler hinge that, my one frustration with this, it's probably terrible for airplanes because the hinge doesn't rotate far enough back. So on an airplane, I'm going to be doing all sorts of unnatural behaviors. Microsoft did some
Wait, did you just say that?
No.
I want to repeat it.
Yeah, correct.
I want to repeat it. Go ahead. You have to rewind.
I think Microsoft's done a fabulous job, and the interesting thing, if I'm HP, if I'm Dell, I'm thinking, holy cow, I won't say they fired a shot across my bows. They fired something into the conning tower. That Microsoft has said, finally, we've learned that controlled ecosystems are hugely profitable. We're giving away Windows 10. If we're not making money on software, we've got to make money on something. Our services strategy, hasn't panned out as well as we would like it to, although I still think it's an interesting and sound strategy. But hey, there's money to be made in hardware. We can do it. And oh, by the way, if those guys haven't figured out software, and they have not, they've left themselves vulnerable. Michael Dell, anybody.
In the pure hardware business.
Yeah, if you haven't figured out that you need to be in the software business to enhance the value of your platform and ecosystem, Microsoft has just said we're coming after your core value prop.
All right, Verizon, 5G.
5G, yeah, and deployment in a year and a half. And there are two great things about 5G. First of all, 4G was also a great step forward along these two metrics. One was not only the bandwidth, but two, the power consumption.
Right.
I still, every once in a while, find I'm using my cell phone in a, whatever's happened, my phone goes back to the old 1X.
Right.
And you can almost watch the battery indicator.
Usually happens at Citi Field.
Yes. Well, that's, I just saw something that, I believe Major League Baseball is working so that high-speed Wi-Fi and better bandwidth will be available in over 20 of the Major League ballparks by opening day next year. And part of that is, people need the battery life, and that's probably a discussion for another day. When are we going to solve that problem? That not only is not moving at Moore's law rates, that's not moving at Yarmis's sprinter rates at this point.
All right, we got one more. Which one do you want to talk about?
Which you're giving me a choice of. This one?
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. Again, this is an interesting one. Amazon, announced in the last couple of weeks that they will not be selling Chromecast and Apple TV. And the reason why they're not doing it is neither of those providers is carrying Amazon TV. So Amazon is basically saying, you won't help us, we won't help you. We're the world's largest electronic marketplace. If customers want your products, they'll just have to go elsewhere. I think Amazon is taking an incredibly short-sighted view.
Yeah. That never works.
Yeah. That notion of we will do anything to harm our competitors. Amazon relies on a lot of goodwill from people wanting to participate in the Amazon ecosystem. And as soon as you send out a message saying, I won't tolerate anything that competes with anything I do, if you're Netflix, for instance, who uses Amazon Web Services.
They do.
Yeah, and I can only imagine the check they write to Amazon every month.
It's crazy, 37% of the internet.
Yeah. If you're Reed Hastings, are you sitting there thinking, whoa, they think Amazon TV is that important to them that they're willing to go after Google and Apple? Am I next?
Well, I'd be sitting there in Microsoft Azure saying, hey, Reed, can we talk?
Oh yeah. If I'm Netflix, I move my business. And Amazon's playing the dangerous game here.
All right, so let's go. We've got our features. Pet peeve.
I wonder if everybody just thinks I'm a cranky guy. Yeah, I'm not usually, but there are just things that get me. And one of my pet peeves this month was, if you ever look at your spam folder, a large portion of your spam folder, the subject line reads RE:. That they're trying to fool you into believing that you actually, they're replying to a message you sent. And I'm sure there's studies that show that mail that has that as the subject line are much more likely to be opened. And when spammers do that, I applaud their thinking that that they understand behavior really, really well. In fact, when you look at these emails that you get from spammers and think, how could anybody be fooled by them? The truth of the matter is, it's a self-selecting mechanism. They know that most of you here are not dumb enough to fall for those tricks. So they don't want those people actually clicking through and consuming resources and buying up their phone. Yeah, they only want the idiots to come through. And that's why they do it the way they do it. I'm getting emails from people who know better, who are legitimate people who are trying to trick me into opening their email by putting that as part of the subject line. Yeah. It's like, no, that just, I'm tempted to click spam and send feedback to mail providers just to punish those kind of people.
What's this one? Word track changes?
Microsoft Word.
Isn't that just your pet peeve in general? No.
Microsoft Word has served me enormously well over the years. But one of the perfect solution, and the perfect solution should exist, but right now we've got two kinds of solutions out there. One of them is Google Docs, where we all have real-time simultaneous access to the document, and in some ways lose total control over everything because you've got 17 people making changes at a document simultaneously.
Right.
And the biggest
version control goes,
yeah,
it's really tough.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Microsoft Word, however, has taken version control to an art where track changes has got to be the most Byzantine, complicated. I know it can do it, and I know what I'm looking for is in there, but I can't find it, make it go away, make it stop.
See, but Microsoft's getting out of the software business, so you're screwed. All right, shame on you.
Shame on you. This is one, in a metered software world, or a metered telecommunications world. Having things that consume large amounts of bandwidth are things that just irritate me. And there are a number of things that do that. Autoplay videos, do that. And video, if you're just doing email and Facebook, normal, status update kind of stuff, you're never going to get to your usage limits. The moment you start playing video is where your usage goes through the roof. And autoplay video default on. If you set the default off and I change it, that's shame on me. If you set it to on and then make it hard to find where the default is, or every time I change the default to off, somewhere along the way, anything that changes resets it to on, I've got a problem with that. And then, related to that, and it happens less in a metered situation, but Microsoft with Windows 10 decided to give people to give you a good user experience. If they thought you were likely to upgrade to Windows 10, they started downloading components in the background so that when you went to actually do the install, they were already there locally. And it sounds like a good user experience, except the fact that there are a lot of times, using my laptop to connect to the internet through my cell phone.
Right. Then you're downloading a gig of.
Then I'm downloading an OS replacement, and there goes my usage, and it's like at that point it would be cheaper for me to have Microsoft ship me the DVD.
All right, just so nobody thinks you're a curmudgeon, let's do some kudos.
Okay. I like cruising. Not that kind of cruising. Not that kind of cruising. Yes,
right?
yes, yes. Carnival Cruise Lines. Any of you have cruised? The internet they charge is insanely expensive, and I understand the infrastructure to do it is much more expensive than your average infrastructure. It's got to be done by a satellite because they're out in the middle of the ocean, and satellite kinds of things are inherently more expensive. But this was not done on a cost. This was a clear profit center. So Carnival is enabling people to do their social media activities, because what's the number one thing you want to do on a cruise? You want to check your Facebook status. You want to torment your friends by uploading pictures, and Carnival is going to enable that for $5 a day.
And
you can do social media.
They want you to update your social, saying that you're having a great time on the cruise. That's almost like an investment in advertising.
Yes. It's revenue generating marketing. I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's great for you, the consumer of the service.
All right. Interesting factoid.
We're the large numbers. 1 in 5 people on Earth regularly use Facebook. 1 in 5 people on Earth are Android users. The Facebook one we knew. The Android one, is interesting. And just show of hands here. How many of you are Android users? Yeah. The proportion. The proportion is small. Yet in the world, Android owns emerging markets, owns the price-sensitive segments of the marketplace.
Price-sensitive. That's
yes. Apple, as they've always done, owns the profitable segments. So the typical Android user doesn't spend a lot of money on applications. The typical Apple user, spends I believe it's some number of multiples the amount of money on applications. So, there's a reason why application developers, for the most part, are favoring the iOS platform, because there's more money to be made, even though the overall market numbers skew massively in the Android camp.
All right, our quote of the month is apropos, considering your San Francisco, your critique of San Francisco technology companies.
Yeah, and I imagine he's one of your favorite authors.
Absolutely.
As well as mine. William Gibson, the author of Neuromancer. And this is a quote I love, because I'm often involved in discussions where people talk about technology, that there are certain things that are just evil or bad, like social media somehow, makes it so we don't talk to human beings. Social media is bad. William Gibson said, I think that technologies are morally neutral until we apply them. It's only when we use them for good or for evil that they become good or evil. I wholeheartedly, I love that sentiment. It's true. We can use technology to enhance our relationships, enhance our solutions, build a better world, or we can use them to make clean diesel seem to be the case.
So technology doesn't make people antisocial. People make people antisocial.
Yes, and I've had enough of you for today.
Oh, well, the sentiment is reciprocated. This has been Pardon My Disruption. I'm Alan Berkson and Dr. Disruptive Jonathan Yarmis. We're here the second Friday of every month. Our next show will be on November 13th.
Friday the 13th.
Friday? It seems like we do a lot of Friday the 13th lately.
Every one of them.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah. It's always the second Friday of the month. Exactly.
That's a tautology, Alan.
You see. So we will be, it's 12 p.m. Eastern Time, live at the Stanford Innovation Center or on Google Hangout. Thanks for joining us today.